That's what's crazy is that they really didn't understand head trauma until, I mean, really that movie Concussion, when that movie came around, then people started looking at like what's going on with football players and what's going on with boxers, and they really started looking at it more differently.
You know what? I'm wondering if, you know, they're starting to like pro wrestling has this, what's it called, when you concussion rule? Okay, so if you had concussions, they'll take care of it. So what I'm saying is, don't you think UFC that a lot of their fighters are going to end up with some kind of brain damage?
100%.
And that there's going to be some liability that comes out?
Well, I don't know if there's going to be some.
I'm just wondering if something like that is going to happen, because these guys don't use gloves.
Right,
you know, they got the small ones.
Well, not only that, you're getting kicked. You're getting
kicked in the head.
Yeah, you're getting kicked, kneed. You're getting slammed on your head.
You see all the damage that's done in boxing.
Yes,
and I mean, MMA is probably worse.
Like, think about when Leon Edwards knocked out Kamaru Usman. Think about that kind of a strike. You're getting head kicked by one of the greatest strikers to ever do with sport.
Might as well get hit in the head with a baseball bat. A leg of an athlete like that is.
Oh yeah.
It's just hard as a wooden bat.
You're getting bone, shin bone, right to your neck.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know, it's crazy. And, you know, who knows? I mean, they do their best to mitigate some of that in training, you know, but some guys don't. Some guys spar real hard in training. And it's like, it's part of the sport. And they know it coming in, and they now, I mean, there's no denying it. You're literally in the brain damage business. Here it goes. Boom!
Oh, jeez.
And when you know how good Kamaru takes a shot, to see Kamaru go out like that,
now,
is just
what
nuts.
kind of long-term damage do you think that just occurred to that guy?
It's a real good question, and it varies with everyone. There's some guys that got knocked out a bunch of times and they're fine.
Jeez.
And there's a thing called, I think it's called APOE4. There's like a gene expression that if you have that, you're more susceptible to CTE than other people, and it's different. But it doesn't mean that you're immune to it if you don't have it. I mean, you're getting kicked and punched, and you know, headbutts. Guys clash heads all the time. It's a very, very, very hard sport, and without doubt, there's going to be guys who the rest of their lives are dealing with the consequences of that, and we see it. We see it with the older fighters. You know, some of these guys are just in complete agony. Like Don Fry. Don the Predator Fry is a legend, like one of the greatest ever.
He's a legend,
Don was in here. I mean, he's hurt, man. It's hard for him to walk. You know, it's like everything is in pain. He can't hardly move that good.
You talk about an old school fighter, man. That guy was a badass.
He's a bad motherfucker. He's a real old school man.
He's there at the beginning.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The very, very, very early days. Mark Coleman, too.
Yeah.
Look, Mark Coleman's got a celebrity boxing match in October against Montel Griffin. Montel Griffin, who fought Roy Jones Jr., who was a light heavyweight champion.
Is that why Mark's been training? Okay.
Yeah. Hammer House for life! Yeah, if you watch his Instagram,
you know what? He was
maniac.
one of my opponents to make the Olympics.
Was he really?
Yeah, him and Mark Kerr.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they were badasses. Those two gave me the worst problems in 1993 and 94.
Really?
They're the ones that were beating me. And then I ended up beating them in 95, 96. But I went through, if you saw my documentary, it's about my training and what I did. What I was doing was exhaust training. That's when you train till you're exhausted, and that's when the training actually begins. And it's almost a form of torture. I learned it from the University of Iowa head wrestling coach, Dan Gable.
Yeah. Dan Gable's
he
a
taught
fucking
his wrestlers
man.
this. And it's about staying in someone's face and just keep going at it. Just never back off. Just stay in there and just keep hand fighting and keep attacking. And that's what I was doing. I was staying on my opponents and getting them tired. Once they got tired, I was scoring. And so I wasn't the biggest or the fastest or the strongest or the most technical, but what I knew I could be is the most well-conditioned.
Here it is.
This is Kerr. This is Mark Kerr. Yep.
Wow.
This is Mark Kerr when he was a normal size.
Yeah.
But Mark Kerr went on to fight in the UFC and went on to fight in Pride. Oh, my God.
Oh, the Smashing Machine.
When he was the Smashing Machine, yeah. That documentary is insane. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
The documentary on Kerr?
Yeah, I did.
Mark Kerr submitted Dan Bobish in the UFC. I was there for this fight. He got on top of him and he stuck his chin in Bobish's eye socket. Grabbed the back of his head and drove his fucking chin into his eye socket.
And he has this pointy chin too, man.
And he was just a giant of a man.
He is.
Show Mark Kerr in his prime. I mean, his trap started at the top of his ears.
I know. He was an animal.
He was so fucking huge.
He got, listen, by the time 96 came around, he didn't look like that anymore. He was like 250, and he wasn't that big. He wasn't that big.
Look at the size of him, bro.
You got to be 300 pounds there.
He was a monster. Yeah. He was a monster. And then he was a monster in pride. He was such a machine.
Yeah.
But he's another guy who fell victim to pain pills.
Yes, he did.
And what's crazy about that documentary, The Smashing Machine, is they caught him in his prime, and what they were documenting in that documentary was a guy who was like this unstoppable force. Mm-hmm. They didn't know that he was at the verge of collapse. They didn't know that he was in the middle of this pain
they were
addiction.
just doing the documentary because of how dominant he
was.
Wow.
Yes. The documentary originally was just about this guy who's this unstoppable force who was competing in Japan in the height of pride. In the height of pride, they were doing this like Japan is so different. When we had the UFC in Japan, they're so knowledgeable and so respectful. It's such a part of the culture that, you know, the matches were huge. They did the Saitama Super Arena. It was 90,000 people. And that was when Kerr was in his prime. Yeah. So what they were documenting was this guy from America, this insane wrestler, this gigantic man that they call the Smashing Machine, going over there and dominating. And they caught him right when it was all falling apart.
Oh, and then that's where the story changed, right?
Yes, and that's the documentary. Wow. And it is about pain pills. It's about pain medication. I mean, I think he was on a bunch of different things. But it was just dealing with the constant
He was the most talented individual I've ever stepped on the mat with. I mean, he was really good.
Really?
Really good, yeah.